The greatest foe of the Time Lords and the Doctor's mortal enemy, the Daleks have been around since the beginning, and not one Doctor has passed without encountering them in some form. Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. They've remained relatively unchanged and always absolutely evil, hell-bent on destroying anything that isn't one of them. But where did they really come from in the beginning? The events of Season 12's Genesis of the Daleks are the most canonical account of the Daleks' beginnings, though when it comes to Doctor Who, canon is notoriously slippery.
If you'll let me have the space-time coordinates, I'll set the TARDIS for Skaro.
There's no need for that, Doctor. You're here. This is Skaro.
What?
The Dalek homeworld was the distant planet Skaro, which was at one point occupied by two humanoid races, the dark-haired Khalids and the light-haired Thals. Fighting for control of the planet, things eventually escalated into a prolonged nuclear war, the 1,000-Year War. Neither faction could remember why the war began, but both became obsessed with eradicating the other. Over the course of the conflict, Skaro became ravaged with radiation, making its surface uninhabitable. The Khalids were forced to live in a bunker, while the Thals lived in a domed city.
Give me a hand. Come on!
In the Khalid city, a group of scientific elites was formed to develop technologies capable of ending the conflict.
Stand up and keep quiet.
One such elite was Davros, the sinister genius whose wheelchair and life support machine is used as the basis of the Dalek design. The radiation caused severe mutations on both sides, creating a third race called Mutos, who were exiled and made to live in the wasteland above. The Mutos dubbed both the Khalids and Thals norms, owing to their lack of mutation, and made it their duty to eradicate any they came across.
She is a norm. All norms are our enemies. Kill her now for what she's done to our kind.
Now why?
Observing the mutations, Khalid scientists eventually decided to change their endeavor. They turned away from stopping the war to trying to preserve their species, which Davros took to extremes. Using mutated subjects from the surface, Davros began to accelerate the mutations rapidly, on purpose, in an effort to control the final form of the Khalids after the mutations have their way. These mutants became the Daleks, an anagram of Khalid, and were placed in almost indestructible Dalekanium cases. They were manufactured to have a hatred of anything and everything that wasn't a Dalek. Davros began to believe in the Dalek solution that all the Khalids must be turned into Daleks in order to survive the conflict with the Thals.
But from its ashes will rise a new race, the supreme creature, the ultimate conqueror of the universe, the Dalek!
The Fourth Doctor was sent back in time with companions Harry Sullivan and Sarah Jane Smith on a mission from the Time Lords to stop the creation of the Daleks from ever happening. He witnessed the reveal of the first ever Dalek, almost becoming its first ever victim.
Brilliant! It has detected the nonconformity. Idiots! I must exterminate!
Despite being there and explaining to the other Khalid scientists, many of whom were opposed to Davros' experimentation, the Doctor was incapable of stopping the Daleks before they begin. He decided he didn't have the right to play God and stop them. Even with his vast knowledge of future events, and his other attempts to prevent their creation were thwarted by Davros, tricking the Thals into helping him wipe out most of the Khalids. He even tried to convince Davros to turn the Daleks into a force for good and peace, but couldn't find a non-violent solution.
When all other life forms are suppressed, when the Daleks are the supreme rulers of the universe, then you will have peace.
At the end of this celebrated serial, however, Davros' monsters turned on him, deeming him inferior because he is not a Dalek and exterminating him.
Exterminate!
The This of course wasn't the last we saw of Davros. It was in fact his first appearance on the show. He's been brought back numerous times at different points in his life, most recently shown as a child in The Magician's Apprentice. Again, the Doctor decides he doesn't have the right to prevent the Daleks' creation by killing Davros as a child.
Exterminate!
But the origin of the Daleks isn't quite as clear-cut. In 1963, nobody knew that Doctor Who was going to become what it did, so emphasis on a coherent canon wasn't an issue. Because of this, until Genesis of the Daleks aired in 1975, the Dalek origin was ambiguous and a little messy. The first Doctor first meets the Daleks in the show's second ever serial, The Daleks, 500 years or so after the events of Genesis and the end of the nuclear war against the Thals. In this continuity, we learned that the Daleks were mutants of a previous race, but these weren't the Khalids, they were the Dals. The Doctor also says that this time the mutations were the natural result of nuclear war, and while the Thals eventually recovered and evolved to be humanoid again, the Dals weren't so lucky.
They are Daleks.
Yes, but we've changed over the centuries. Why shouldn't they?
They ended up confined to a large steel city on Skaro, using metal walkways powered by static electricity to move.
After the neutronic war, our Dalek forefathers retired into the city, protected by our machines.
The Daleks weren't the killing machines we know today in this story, but they did eventually try to exterminate the Thals in typical fashion. The Doctor luckily stepped in to prevent this, eradicating the Daleks instead, though they were already back and conquering Earth by the following season.
Even if I wanted to, I don't know how.
The events of Genesis of the Daleks could have erased the events of the Daleks from Who continuity, as the Fourth Doctor's interventions may have prevented the later events from ever happening, especially because Davros' Daleks are advanced enough that they don't need the metal walkways for power.
Then you must answer not only to me, but to the future.
Genesis' events were corroborated much later, in season 25, by the 7th Doctor, when he notes that the Daleks are Khalid mutations caused by the nuclear war on Skaro and exasperated by Davros. Davros' return in New Who means that the genesis of the Daleks is the established origin story.
You are insane, Davros!
But Dalek creator Terry Nation didn't stop there. His estate still holds copyright over the Daleks, and he was behind most of the classic Who Dalek stories. In 1973, 10 years after the Daleks and 2 years before Genesis, both written by him, he concocted a third origin story, We Are the Daleks. While this was a short story and is even further from being canonical than either of the serials, it added an account that vastly contradicts both of them, postulating that the Daleks are actually advanced human mutants and not Khalids at all. They don't even come from Skaro in this continuity, they come from Ollendorf 2, a much less memorable planet. To this day, the Daleks remain the Doctor's most compelling and distinct villains, with many of their stories serving as allegories warning against fascism and the horrors of nuclear war. Though when all is said and done, they're still giant, one-eyed salt shakers with a toilet plunger for an arm. Just what was Davros thinking? Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojo UK and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.